Hello there. Welcome back to the book set Completionist, episode 37. And today I've got a trilogy for you and 2 science fiction novels. You'll see that later. What I'm about to reveal to you is the following. A trilogy written in the years 2003, 4, and 6 by a male author who is not that well known, I think. The genre is fantasy, and the author's name is R. Scott Bucker, B-A-K-K-E-R, which seems like a Dutch word pronounced as Bucker, which means baker. The author is not Dutch, but maybe his ancestors were. Okay. The name of the series is The Prince of Nothing, and this is it. It starts with part 1, The Darkness That Comes Before, followed by The Warrior Prophet, and finally, The Thousandfold Thought. I am happy to announce that these books indeed do include maps. It's been a while since I covered books with maps in them, and that thrills me beyond belief. Yes. So let's take a look at those maps. Right, so look at these nice covers. We've got Darkness That Comes Before, Warrior Prophet, and The Thousandfold Thought. Nice. I want to look at this book in particular because that one has the most maps. The other ones also have maps, but they all appear in this volume. Now, I'll tell you that the map in this book looks pretty familiar if you're a fantasy fan like I am. This is it, the main map, Erwa, the name of this continent. Now, if you ask me, having a sea on the left side and a big mountain range on the right side, well, I don't have to tell you what that looks like, do I? But anyway, this does have a sea in the center, so if you look closer at this zoomed in part, the western 3 seas, you'll see more details on cities along the coast, specifically this one, because if you then turn the page, it goes into a more zoomed in view of the city of Shime. Right. See if we can zoom in a bit here. So that looks pretty detailed, at least for this one. And don't we love detailed maps? Oh, yes we do. Right. So I'm happy that there's a map in this book. It's been a while since any maps appeared on this channel. There you go. Right, then we've got this novel by A.E. van Vogt called Moonbeast, published in the late 60s. However, this is what they refer to as a fix-up novel. That means that this is not an original work, it's rather a collection of shorter stories published earlier. And these stories were published in magazines back in the 40s. And they were connected. They had the same main character, and there was some kind of progressive plot line between them, but they were never published as a just single volume until the 60s. And until now, I hadn't read them, but now I have. Being from the 40s gives you a whole new idea of what science fiction, well, used to be. And this particular author is famous for his, well, maybe disjointed way of writing, enhanced by the fact that they are not supposed to be, they were not intended to be a single story. They were short stories and then connected with a couple of plot devices, I guess. But it feels like that. It shows. It doesn't feel coherent and cohesive. But all right, there's still a lot in there. So what is it about? It's about a guy. It takes place in the present time, in the 40s, right before World War II, and that is significant here. I'll tell you later why. But there's a guy who's a war veteran, and he has lost his arm in that war, and he's now tending to his land. And one day he stumbles upon some kind of weird piece of machinery, sort of lodged in the mountainside or the hillside, and he recovers it, brings it home, and tries to make it work. And because this engine is what it's an engine, it just doesn't behave like anything he has ever seen. So he tries to experiment with it, tries to make it work, and he figures it out, and he's able to put it on a plane as the engine of that plane and fly with it. Huh. However, soon after, some shady figures approach him and tell him to hand it over. Sir, this is highly classified property belonging to some. So yeah, he has been robbed of his find, and yeah, what can he do? So he just lets it go. However, does he? No, he tries to figure out who's behind the organization, and he comes to their headquarters, somehow figures out where they are, and then that's where the first story ends. He gets basically abducted and sent to some unknown location, possibly even off-world on Venus, and that's where it ends. And then it picks up with that same character, but in a completely different setting. He now has a job. He's working in a company. But it turns out that that company in his life is completely fabricated. Why? Well, so as you may have guessed, did I say that he regrew his arm? Right? Did I say that? Well, his arm that he had lost before had grown back because of the engine's radiation. So the engine is clearly some sort of alien object, and it has qualities of restoration of limbs and others. And so that benefits him. He also becomes more powerful because of that. And he then becomes sort of a carrier for that rejuvenation ability. His blood, when matched with somebody else's same blood type, could also transfer that sort of regenerative skill ability to somebody else. Yeah. That is one, and again, then it stops and it goes on into another area where they now are on the moon. And on the moon, there is a secret society living underground because of some sort of portal that had been transporting animals and people since like the dawn of time. And what, again, this same main character is there. He finds a Neanderthal who managed to learn English in charge of this moon colony. While at the same time, on the surface of the moon, there are Nazis trying to establish their own foothold onto the moon. See, in the 40s, the Nazis were there, and that's why they make an appearance in this book. So it's wild. There's so many crazy things in this novel that you may wonder, like, where does it all go? Again, it feels a little bit messy because all these stories are sort of patched and glued together to make it one, but yeah, it doesn't really work. It's very chaotic. So if you like experimental science fiction, you could give it a try. If you like old school, it's a bit pulpy. The main character is basically a superhero, but it's unique, for sure. It's unique. So if you're into this kind of thing, give it a try. And then we turn to something more conventional. Planet of Judgment by Joe Haldeman, who wrote other works of science fiction, for example, The Old Man's War. No, that's Scalzi. Sorry, The Forever War. Yeah, that's what he's most well known for. And this one, as you can see, features the Star Trek characters and concepts. Star Trek, I don't have to explain what Star Trek is, do I? Well, A lot of science fiction authors were allowed to write stories with these people, the crew, with the spaceship, with the whole universe of Star Trek. And this guy, Mr. Haldeman, did it in 1977, published this book about the crew finding on their way, well, back home, I guess. They were on a mission. But while they were on their mission to return back home, they stumbled upon a crazy looking planet. A planet with a small sun. The sun was literally like this big. Also, really not a sun, rather a dark hole. Is it a black hole? Dark hole? No, wait, it's a black hole, right? Why the dark hole? Ugh, a black hole. Yeah, but super small and also radiating light, so it looked like a sun. Anyway, the crew got very curious because they couldn't really figure out what it could be. The planet was not part of any system, it just was hovering in space. And they decided to send their little shuttle over and have a look at the surface. But as soon as they touched down, their ship became unusable. It didn't work anymore. Engines failed, communication systems failed. Nothing worked. Even their weapons couldn't kill anything. And that was a problem because they were immediately attacked by the local wildlife, resembling dinosaurs. And then the main ship said, oh, wait, what happened to them? Let's send another shuttle and check out what happened. Okay, same thing happened. So then they had to establish some kind of refuge on the surface of the planet. And after a while, they figured out that there were other aliens. There were aliens living on that planet. And as they got in touch with these aliens, it became clear that these aliens wanted to experiment rather, on the human crew, because humans have special abilities in the eyes of aliens, specifically in terms of, well, what makes us human, uh, emotions, decision-making capabilities, and also betrayal. Like, what does it mean for a human to get betrayed? And could that be used somehow in the aliens' advantage, for whom betrayal was not really a concept that they were familiar with, right? So, after communicating with these aliens, it became clear that these aliens were preparing for the arrival of another alien species who were much more terrible in their objectives than anything they could imagine. Mm-hmm. So I won't tell you what that is because you should probably read it yourself if you can. It's nice. It's a solid Star Trek adventure. Like, if you're familiar with it, if you've seen the movies like I have from the early 2000s, or if you are a longtime fan from the early days, I mean, that looks pretty vintage. I'm sure you'll enjoy this. And it's slim, 150 pages, so why don't you give it a try? I'd say. Right, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.